Tun
Yeah,
tun tun tun
yeah.
tun tun.
That beat is so tough.
Yeah, that's a tough beat, bro. That joint is super tough. You know what
That's
I'm
the
saying?
apologist.
That's the apologist?
That's the apologist.
Oh man, the Apple O gist. Don't apologize for this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, back to the grill again. The grill
Grill
again.
again.
Back to the grill again. The grill again. Oh man, there's some good stuff to talk about tonight. First of all, let's make sure we let everybody know this is season 4, episode 9.
Yeah.
If you are watching,
Clap, 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 clap.
wherever you are watching, thank you, thank you. If you were on Facebook Live, thank you. If you were watching from YouTube Live, thank you. If you were not on YouTube, then go to YouTube, subscribe, go to Curt Kennedy's Corner, subscribe to the channel, like the joint, talk about it, all that good stuff. Season 4, episode 9. Man, we are a couple days away from Christmas. Actually, so for you, Christmas is tomorrow. And my wife and my family, because it's Latino, so I do Christmas Eve, and then I do Christmas Day, the 25th. So what you got going on for tomorrow?
Work.
You working in the
Yeah,
restaurant?
we open at the restaurant tomorrow, fam.
Oh, that's what y'all doing.
Word up. Yeah, we working. Nah, but it's gonna be special though because tomorrow night, um, the kids is coming over, except with the exception of Angel. Angel's overseas in Bahrain still.
Okay,
Um,
right.
but yeah, Nina, Alir, Leani, Leighton, they're gonna be sleeping over tomorrow night. So we're
Right,
gonna
that's
have
what's
them
up.
until the morning, get some nice breakfast going,
So are
open
y'all
the
gonna do
gifts.
it different this year? Are y'all gonna do like Christmas on the 25th because y'all opening the restaurant, or y'all gonna do 24th
Yeah, now
after
we usually do Christmas morning, like
Oh, you do?
Christmas Day
Okay,
morning.
okay,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, we usually do that.
So
This
you a
year just so
Latino, then
happens.
you a fake Latino because y'all do the 24th, man. Y'all do.
I mean, that's a religious thing more than anything, fam. I don't really, if it was like that, I'd be Catholic. You know what I'm saying? I
Right.
don't, so yeah, we don't bang with the,
Yeah, I ain't tripping.
yeah, the Dia de los Reyes or whatever. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? We don't get with that. We don't get with that.
Yeah, my
But
kids would be struggling, man. They've grown up with 2 Christmases their whole life.
nice.
So they
They
get the
privileged.
24th.
They
So
privileged.
my wife's family comes over on the 24th, which is tomorrow night. And then Saturday we go to my mom's
Mm.
family. So we do Christmas Day. So my
So they get
kids,
that double dose.
man, they get double dose.
That's
So I
what's up.
told them,
I ain't
listen, you
mad
better
at
marry a Latina when you get older so you can keep that going for your kids.
yeah, for real.
Cause sometimes them pockets it be tighten in the pockets. So I'm grateful for that, man. Grateful. Good Christmas this year. We're gonna get into that, man. We're gonna talk about some things about Christmas and a little bit of the origin of some of this stuff. We're gonna
Let's
get
do
this.
it.
We appreciate y'all joining us. Thank you for those of you who are watching on the live stream. I'm seeing the number go up. I appreciate it. Good
Yeah.
to see y'all. As a matter of fact, one of the homies jumped in there. Brandon Rogers. Yo.
Hey, what up? What up? What up?
Says, man, loving the beat and the new album, fam.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
tough.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. You know what I'm saying? Norm, the homie Norm, what's good, fam? You know what I'm saying? What's good? Facebook user, myself. Somebody hacked my Facebook, y'all. So whatever y'all see, that's not me because I'm live here. Whoever that Facebook user is a liar, like the devil. You know what I'm saying? We got somebody else off the now we don't know who that is. They probably watching from the Cross Examine live stream. Facebook user, what up? Good to see you, man. I don't know who you are, but you do. And the Lord knows who you are. Enjoying the album. Hey, fam, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate. As a matter of fact, man, as we start the show, I want to talk a little bit about just the project and just the feedback I've been getting, man. I think
As we should.
last week you all heard about the album and some of what we were trying to do, and Stract banging with the hat. It says Stract stay with the fresh hat. Hey,
Yes.
you know what I'm
Sixers,
saying?
they playing in about a half an hour. This is how much I love y'all. We do
Right,
the show live knowing I'm gonna miss some Sixers games.
right,
That's how much I
right.
love y'all.
That's it. That's how much he lays down that idol for y'all. And I get
Word up. Way to
it.
put it into perspective. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and it would be the same for me if it was Sunday. A depressed Redskins fan, ladies and gentlemen. You know what I'm
Hey,
saying? So,
especially after last, couple
hey,
days ago.
listen, man. You already know what's up. That was not our team. We don't even.
Yeah.
Who was the quarterback? That dude has started 2 games. So yeah, you get the W. I can't take that from you. But you had your players though. Miles Sanders was on point.
He was doing his
Jalen
thing.
was on point.
Yeah.
Y'all was on point. Like who? I was like, man, who is? We was texting each other like, fam, who is this on the team? Right? Who? I don't even
Yeah, I
know who.
sent you that emoji like,
I know because
you
I was
know
like,
what I'm saying?
so I'm hearing we got some serious echo, man. Know what I'm saying? We got some serious echo. I imagine he's talking about me. I don't hear the echo. I don't know if you hear it on your end. I don't hear any echo.
I don't hear any echo at all, but that don't mean we don't got it.
That don't mean we don't got it. I mean, Norm don't play with us. Norm is for real with it. He
I
understand.
tell you what, Norm, I'm gonna throw my headphones on just for the echo, just in
Just in
case. Let's
case.
see.
And
Let's
while
see
he's
if
doing
that.
that, man, let me just say this. I want to say thank you, first of all, to those of you who are here. Appreciate it, Norm. Thank you. I know Norm. I already know Norm is going to probably put out his own video about that album, and I always appreciate those. Not because I think he's going to say something that I like, but I think he says stuff that he understands how to evaluate an album, right? He understands how to peel apart and look at what you do, and so I just want to say first and foremost, thank you for those of you who got the album. If you heard the episode last week, even though my audio was struggling, I don't know what I was thinking, trying to do it in my backyard and not realizing that good it's good. We got the echoes gone. It was your headphone strap.
All right, bet. Thanks, Norm. We appreciate you, brother.
So that was the echo. I mean the echo. Last week I had some serious audio issues because I was in the back of my house. I just wanted to do something different, but the Wi-Fi wasn't. It was
You was
choppy.
trying to create a vibe. You was
I was
trying
trying
to
to create
create
a
a
vibe.
vibe.
You know what I'm saying? I wanted to create the vibe. But I was letting y'all know how the album came apart. Some of the opposition I felt like I had experience in releasing the album, both from the challenges with getting the album cover up. And I thought I was going to change it to the problems with the video on YouTube and all this stuff. And so I didn't know how things were going to play out. And it wasn't until the album dropped that Friday and I was just getting tagged by different people, text messages from different people, and just saying they love the album, appreciate it. I mean, I'm sure there's people that didn't like it, but I'm not going to hear from those people. You know what I'm saying? So,
Right.
um, and this brother just said, Brandon again said the album has a lot of layers to it, and it does. And I think most people know when you hear Curt Kennedy Project, that's going to be reality.
Word.
And so I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you, first of all, for listening to the album and letting it just kind of marinate. I know in this season, the kind of topic that I'm talking about is not festive, right? We're talking about the schemes of the devil in terms of our ability and him using us to be entertained by violence and not really seeing the devil behind a lot of what's happening in the culture. That's not really festive Christmas themed music. But I never make music for a season. I make music for what I believe the season the church is in.
Word.
And so
I'll
the
tell you
album,
what is festive though. Them beats is festive. Cause
yeah,
them
yeah, yeah,
beats be knocking.
yeah, them some joints on there. I mean,
Word up.
that. Listen, man, that's one thing nobody can say. You can't. Even people that don't like me, you can't deny that. Like I usually find good production.
Yeah.
I do. The Lord has given me grace to be able to have an ear to hear beats, to get beats that I can rock, and beats that really challenge me to be a little bit more creative with my style. So
Yeah, they got bounce for sure.
yeah, it does. Nah. So I do want to thank everybody for listening to it. If you haven't checked that out, I mean, this is the first album I made available for streaming, and the main reason was because I felt like this album, I really wanted everyone to really hear. I felt like, when I've done albums on race, on sexuality, and all those things, every artist thinks what they do is important, no question. But I felt like this album needed to be, I needed to make it accessible to everyone. And I know that when I put out an album and I only ask people to buy it, you're going to get people who buy it. So you're going to get people who go to who say, "Look, I'm going to Bandcamp. I want to support this brother." Sometimes they give more than what the album's asked for. And then you got the people who buy it from iTunes, and then it take a couple months to upload it. But I felt like on this project, man, I really just wanted the people to hear it. So if I don't make back what I put into it, that was really less important to me and
Right.
more about let me make sure people hear what's happening, because I do believe that I have a perspective to offer that's not being really said and all of that stuff. So So I want to thank everybody so far for the feedback. It's been less than a week, and I still feel like, and I plan to do some other promotion and some other things coming up. But I thought let's get past Christmas and all of that since everybody's in that
Mm-hmm.
lane. But I did want to say a couple things, man, about the project. I hope people understand. Again, I am a very layered artist, so I hope people really get what I was trying to accomplish. There are multiple layers that we're gonna fill out, and actually, some of the themes of the album, some of the themes of the album were stuff that I wanted to talk about, but was waiting to talk about because I didn't want to. I was talking to one of the homies who hit me, who did a post. He was like loving the project, and so when people do that, I feel weird liking those kind of posts. It's like, oh, everyone's watching you like someone honor your project. So I usually hit him privately sometimes, and so I hit him and I said, hey, bro, what did you think about the project and like what stood out to you? And he said, I said, how does it stand up? And he said, man, to be honest, like the first album he had heard from me was The Appendix. And so that was my first albumentary, and it was really woven together and connected. And he said, then Philosophy, he said, I mean, you had some joints on there, but because it wasn't as well connected, I didn't bang with it as much, right? But then he said Reporting Live, and he made a good observation, which I actually felt this when I was making the album, but I still felt like I needed to say these things. But he was like, because he said, because I heard much of what you said on Reporting Live on the podcast and stuff, and I was already tired of like the race conversations in the church. That album was okay, but it didn't really like I wasn't banging it like he said. But this joint is up there with like The Appendix and so forth, and so for me, I really felt like it's time to let the race stuff. I've said all of that, and now I have stuff like Substack and other things that I can use to communicate my thoughts on that. I felt like it's time to really address what I think are deeper issues. People were asking me to write a book on race, and I was like, you know what? Nah, man, because I don't think that's a deeper issue. I think that's a scheme that's not really dealing with more significant issues. And
Yeah, we got
so,
enough of those.
yeah, it's enough of
Yeah.
that. I think what we're talking about on this project, what I'm talking about on this project, and what we're going to be talking about in future episodes, I think is more pertinent to what is happening in the culture and what the church should really need. So I appreciated that, man. So I'm encouraged, man, by the feedback. Different people saying things. One brother's like, yes, the album is very dense and much needed. It's a heavy subject. The many
Yeah.
layers is what people need. It has some serious bangers. Man, I appreciate that. Because let me tell you something. As an artist, you really don't know you don't know if people are going to resonate with you, man. You really whatever you do, whether it's painting, whether it's music, whether it's like acting or writing a book, you're really writing what you feel like is happening, and you hope people resonate with that. And then
Yeah.
and then sometimes you don't have the kind of access to get it out there so that more people can hear it. So I am grateful so far for that, man. That's what's up, man. Thank you for the album being fire. I appreciate that and all of that. So I just feel like in this season, what the church is missing is the devil. Like, where did this dude go? Like, how did he become sort of a superstitious entity in the charismatic church? And how did he, in our circles, in the more reformed circles, kind of become a persona non grata? Like, that is not the way the Bible talks about him at all. And most of our knowledge of the devil, or at least a good bit of it, is post resurrection theology, right? So this is after Jesus already died and rose from the dead. And all the letters from Paul, when he mentions the schemes of the devil, when he talks about, Peter talking about he's a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. When James talks about resist the devil and he will flee from you. When Paul says, we do not wrestle with flesh and blood, like, I think people forget that like the devil's main occupation is to destroy the church. And he can't destroy the church as a fundamental entity because we're of God, but he can destroy the reputation of the church, right?
Hmm.
He can't take genuine believers away from their salvation, but he can make them ineffective and unfruitful for the kingdom. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot that's going on. And when I look at American culture, even all the race and politics, all the anger that people would be spewing, all the vitriol, right? To me, a lot of that had a deeper issue of like we've just been so desensitized to like real violence and real evil, and we've been so entertained by it that it's easy for us to actually imitate it. It's not life just doesn't imitate art, right? Art imitates life, right? So
Right.
like so sometimes we give in to the things that we see when we're made aware of them. And I feel like with the album I wanted to capture a real serious reality and help people say, "Hey, let me pay attention to this." So there was a brother who he posted and I reposted it because I appreciated it. He said, "Hey, listening to the new album, walked into a store and right on the magazine rack, and he took a picture of it. Was
I
a
saw
big
that.
picture of Al
Yeah.
Capone. You saw that, right?"
Yeah, I
And
saw that.
he said, "Man, this album is making me think because the stuff that I'm talking about, this dude's been dead for a long time, and there's still a celebration of him, right?
Right.
There's still a fascination with Al Capone. Like, why are we fascinated by these individuals? Why in the hood? Why are the dudes who are the most violent are the most respected, right?
Right.
We from the rap culture, right? Remember when that mantra, keeping it real, keep it real?
Yeah.
Like keep it real, man. Grab your still. Remember, MC Light. Gotta watch yo. Gotta get a roughneck. Gotta watch
Right.
yo. Gotta get a roughneck. There was this sense where within the black culture, within the rap culture, the Latino culture, the culture that embraced rap, you got to be violent. You got to go hard. You got to be gangster. Why is that?
Hmm.
Why do we resonate with all of it? Like
You know,
Batman.
when you was
I'm
talking
vengeance.
about Satan, the devil, and the way people view him or don't view him anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
What came to mind to me was like I can only think really of three occurrences where we have any interaction in Scripture where Satan is actually dealing with people.
Mm-hmm.
We have him as the snake, the serpent in the
Right.
garden.
Genesis 3, right?
Uh, right. We have him as the one who came before the Lord in the heavenly council
Yeah. And Job.
Job. Yeah,
Yeah,
Job.
Job 1 and 2.
And we have him also in the temptation with Jesus.
Right.
I mean, aside from the prophetic fall, the fall of the king that's tied to Satan,
Right.
all those, I can't think of any other than those three accounts. So it's just seeing his interactions there, knowing that he's the father of lies. We know that he's wicked, obviously, right? We know this, but
Mm-hmm.
it's hard for me to put together because as a society we've kind of tied Satan to all of the evil things we see on media.
Mm-hmm.
Like movies, horror films, all these
Mm-hmm.
things. We have a certain
Right.
portrayal.
Right. Yeah.
Um, Yet, how much of that really just came from man's own imagination and
Mm-hmm.
wickedness as well? I think tied in, obviously being the father of lies, he's going to be the foundation of falsehoods,
Mm-hmm.
of wickedness, all of these things. Um, but I just wonder how much of man is actually involved in that as well. I mean, we see in James that temptation comes from our own hearts, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And I know here our goal is to push that people have swept Satan to the side. But I think really, man, they kind of, I think we've just assumed the position of Satan almost.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like as a distraction, we've kind of confused ourselves to become the new Satan, as we've
Right.
done with God. Like even with
Yeah.
Satanists, when you think about Satanists, like they,
Mm-hmm.
their mantra, if you will, or Luciferians, I forget which one is which, but one of them believes in a real Satan and the other doesn't, but yet wants to do things from a selfish, and to help society
Right. Yeah.
supposedly.
Satan is about the elevation of self. Right.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's just I don't know where I was coming from with that, but it just made me think of those occurrences of Satan in Scripture, and we don't really have him tied to like gore and all of these
Yeah.
other, at least not from a scriptural perspective.
So let me tell you what I think. I didn't say this on the album because I'm working on a bigger treatise on this, but I really wanted the album to sort of be the introduction of what I'm going to be, my writings and what I'm doing this year. But one of the things that I think happened is that when the Enlightenment happened, you get this you get this elevation of reason, philosophy, and science, right? And so in the Enlightenment period, a lot of the church ended up taking the same scientific sort of process that the Enlightenment uses and applied it to theology. So you get a lot of the defending, the defending the nature of God and defending these things about God, and very, really things that even the Bible doesn't reconcile. Theology tried to reconcile as proof that God exists. And during that Enlightenment period, you see Satan. He kind of like that Homer Simpson gif where he just slides into the bushes, right?
Right.
Like, I think what Satan did during the Enlightenment was to really make his persona be something that's kind of childish, because because reason, science, and philosophy in the Enlightenment were used to attack faith, right? So once you start thinking about reason and philosophy, the devil doesn't really have a place. Like, that has to do more with faith and the supernatural and the metaphysical world, where the Enlightenment deals with the natural world, right?
Right.
The mind and the way the mind thinks. And so the devil was really, as a scheme, really took himself out of it, made the notion of his presence really stupid, almost like that's what those dumb Christians believe and people of faith believe. There's no
Sure.
such thing as a devil. People are, he allowed that to happen. And once you don't need a devil, then you don't need his adversary, right? You don't need God then. Because if the greatest evil doesn't exist, then why do I need to submit to the greatest good, so to speak? So what you see in a lot of post-enlightenment theology is also the absence of the devil. It becomes more about, except in the charismatic circles, where for some of them they got too superstitious with the devil,
Right.
where everything is a devil. And then again, once again, he becomes a caricature of himself. And so when you think about post enlightenment theology, a lot of the devil as a functioning, formidable opponent is missing. We talk about him in theological terms as the serpent, and using the narratives that you brought out from the scriptures, Genesis, Job. You got somebody mentioned the census when the devil tempted. You got Satan entering Judas. You get these moments where you see the devil existing, but
Right.
largely he became, in the Enlightenment area, a figment of Christian imagination. And so as we come out of the Enlightenment, America is birthed eventually as a nation through that. You get all of it, right? So now there's no need for a devil because it's all about naturalism. The supernatural is really the dumb aspect. And so in post Enlightenment theology did not do a good job explaining how do we deal with these three categories of the world, the flesh, and the devil. So what we did was we made it the world and the flesh, and then the devil became like a flunky because he was defeated on the cross. But New Testament theology never sees him like that. Never sees them like that. So I feel like in many ways, and then you see him just morph in the Victorian illustrations through novels and writings and plays, and then you get to America, and there's just an absence of his presence apart from, so what the devil's been reduced to is either the god of war like Ares whenever there's huge destruction and earthquakes and or great genocide, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then or he's been reduced to Loki, this mischievous kind of figure that everyone's just like, but he's neither of those things. And so a lot of it to me was, let me introduce people to what I'm thinking and what I'm seeing, and then in writing subsequent writings, they're going to get more of a robust understanding of what I really believe is happening. So I'm reading a lot of stuff just to get my mind ready. But the album was this version of the album, because there's two versions of this album. The other version is not an album entry. It's just straight bars and beats. And that comes out in a month. And that was just the bars and just, but this album of this version of the album was really to say, hey, are you sure you realize that you, first of all, are you sure you're not as violent as you think, right?
Right.
Jesus said, if you are angry towards your brother in his heart, you've committed murder.
Mm-hmm.
Are you sure you're not a serial killer? Like, how many people have you been angry at your heart? You look at social media. Look at how easily dudes will just insult dudes. Angry because you disagree with their position. You
Right.
disagree with the vaccine. You disagree with social justice. You disagree with. Jesus says you commit murder in your heart when you're angry, right? Serial killers, to be a serial killer, you kill 2 to 3 people over a span of a couple months. If we're being honest, if Jesus is right, which he is, about how anger in our hearts commits murder, many of us have killed many more than two or three people over the span of a couple of months.
Right.
So are you sure you're not a serial killer? Again, so there's a lot of layers to the album that I was trying to convey and some serious stuff. So this was just a foray into it musically to get people to appreciate what I'm going to be hopefully dropping in more literature form. So I'm
So
really
let's
grateful.
So I think it'd be smart to just head something. I know we got our. I just have a question.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How would you say, um, based on your understanding from Scripture, obviously, that Satan functions today? Like Satan is a part of the heavenly realm. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? And interacting. Can you break that down for us, please?
Well, I think he's a supernatural being that
Mm-hmm.
has been given authority on the earth. So he is called both the God of this world and the Prince of the earth in Scripture. And these are names given by the Holy Spirit, inspired by the Holy Spirit, written by men to call him these names. I mean, when you think about the him tempting Jesus, when it said he was able to show him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment's time,
Right.
he was granted a supernatural ability to show Jesus all that, like it, almost in an omniscient, right,
Right.
omnipresent way, so he could tempt Jesus. Like he was given, so he has been called the God of this world and the Prince of the earth, right? So he functions solely to destroy the kingdom of God. So you get all the opposites. So in the Revelation, you get the false Trinity, the beast, the prophet, the false prophet, and Antichrist, right? You get a false trinity. You get it. So his job is to always do the opposite of what God has created, to kind of uncreate what God
Right.
has created.
And mislead.
All of
Yeah.
it. So,
Yeah.
and he uses many ways to do that. Obviously, misleading is a mainstay in doing that. So the devil's job is really to oppose the church. 2 Timothy 2:26 says that he already has taken non-believers captive to do his will.
Hmm.
So he's not really after them. He controls them. He's after the church. And I think a scheme of the devil, which will be a subsequent episode, is that we don't think he's after the church. So one of the ways that he's working in the church is to make us think everything is about flesh and blood.
Right.
So it's always the liberals, it's always the conservatives, it's always the social justice warriors, it's always the immigrants trying to come. It's always these people, and it's never the enemy. And I think the church doesn't know, hasn't done a good job in many in the church haven't done a good job in showing how does he play out today, what's his responsibility, how does he get to move, and how are we affected, am I affected?
Hmm.
And I think we are. We may not be able to be possessed by a devil, but we're allowed to be tempted, right?
Right.
We're supposed to be tempted. And it's not just my flesh, it's also the enemy who controls this world. So images that we see. We're people of habit, and there's two things we gotta remember. We're people of habit and we're people of community.
Hmm.
So we're going to imitate the habits within the community. So
Yeah.
if I am seeing people growing and being angry and acting in ways that are outside of the fruits of the spirit, well, that's satanic. I mean, don't forget when Peter said, Lord, uh, you're not going to die. You're not going to die on the cross. He told Peter, what? Get behind me, Satan.
Right.
And all Peter was trying to do was say, man, I don't want you to die. And he was
Yeah.
saying, no, your thinking is satanic, even. So I think the devil plays a much more significant role than we give him credit for. He definitely influences the world, and believers who live in the world, we're influenced by what we see. We're
Hmm.
affected by the people that we love, people that we see, the images that come across to us. We get desensitized to things that are we should be compassionate towards. And so now when they happen, it's easier for us. So I may not watch John Wick and want to go shoot and kill people, right? Of
Right.
course not. I may not watch a scary movie and want to do act it out, right? I may not watch those things, but because I'm desensitized to those things, it makes it easier for me to be acceptable aggression, right? So now if I disagree with you, I can be angry towards you, I can insult you, even though we both profess to be believers. Even though if I really sat down with you, I'd realize you believe in Jesus Christ. You're going to be in Revelation 7 like I am. But
Right.
because the enemy allows the culture to become more and more flesh and blood, we don't think that what we're doing are really spiritual things.
Yeah.
So he's
Yeah,
taken
I
the
think
spirituality out of it, the eternity out of our lives.
even in that occurrence with Peter, I think Peter sounded like the tempter,
Uh huh.
sounded like Satan.
Yeah.
You know,
Did
you're not
God really
going to
say
die. You're not
almost?
surely going to die. Like, you can't take the cross.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? God forbid that would happen.
Right.
He had the mentality of this world. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying? He was
Mm-hmm.
functioning from a very worldly perspective, thinking of this king that would save,
Right.
you know,
And we got to
save
remember
the
that's from God's
zealots.
perspective. When
Right,
Jesus said, "Get behind me, Satan,"
right,
from God's perspective, if you think,
right.
just even think outside of what God's will is, it's satanic.
Yeah, he linked
There's
him
no
with the
gray
adversary.
area.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no
That's
gray
wild.
area. And I think we're afraid of that, I think, in the church. So it's just easy to just make it about these people. It's like this. It's like even just like without the devil. Like you ever told someone, man, you make me so angry, or
Right.
just the blame is like, well, the accuser, the devil is the accuser of the brethren, right? He
Yeah,
blames
you
it. So we just
hold
imitate him even in that. Like you make me so angry. It's like, well,
the
Jesus.
irony the irony behind Peter trying to save Jesus from the cross,
Uh huh.
right? Like you have what would be from the outskirts, if you're looking at the situation, you would think it was a good thing that Peter was doing. He's trying to save his rabbi from taking upon himself a cross and dying, you know,
Right.
from being persecuted, ultimately to death. And most people would say, well, Peter was thinking about the Savior. He was thinking good
Right.
about him.
He was
He
being
was
loving, right?
he
He was
was
being
trying
loving.
to defend him. He was
Right.
trying
Right.
to save him. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And people take on that same mentality, thinking they're attempting to save the church or to save the reputation of God. And really they're presenting a satanic perspective
100%, bro.
because love is entirely removed from it.
So
That's
hey, listen. So now we doing something we're not supposed to be doing. But let me just say this, right?
what? What are you talking about?
So let me tell you where you see that play out a lot, right? So in the sense where, oh man, I want to. This is supposed to be an episode, man. This is supposed to be an episode coming up. I don't want to. I'm not. I'm gonna hold off.
Yeah,
That's an
don't
episode.
do it. We got a whole joint over here to go through, so
Yeah,
we
yeah.
good.
Nah, I'm gonna hold off, man. That's I'm gonna save that because there's an episode that we're gonna do devoted to that. You know what I'm saying? Somebody watching said I think violence resonates because it sells 100%. I mean, that was what Natural Born
Definitely,
Killers, the video. That was what I
definitely.
was communicating in the video, right? This is
Yep.
how capitalism is used sinfully. Being kind to your neighbor has a very niche market unless believers redeem the arts and culture.
Mm.
I appreciate that, bro. And I mean, that's what I was trying to do in saying that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
demonic or anthropic is how I at times had to look at the devil. Right.
Hmm.
I'll say, yeah, I appreciate that.
You're giving some
Um,
words we're gonna have to look up in the dictionary.
I know what them joints mean.
Word
You
up.
know what I'm saying?
You
You know,
do.
T Dog, what's up with you, baby? Welcome to the show. So yeah, man, with the album, I wanted to communicate that there's a lot I want to do, but I don't want to just devote. I want to give time for people to sit with the album, and then I want to unpack some of the things that are there over the weeks to come. Because there's some stuff that I'm sure people missed, and unless just like anything,
There's
and so
always gonna be that, but that's the
yeah,
fun part. You know, that's what
yeah.
brings you back to listen more.
Right. So what? Just real quick, man. How did the album impact you? What'd you think of it? Because you my friend, so you know what I'm into. You get to, we talk a lot, so you know what I'm thinking. How do you, someone who knows and who hears a lot of my thoughts, process a project like that?
Yeah. So basically, what gets me about the project, other than the information, because the information, like you said, a lot of it we interact, we talk. I'll catch bits and pieces of a lot of what you're sharing. So hearing it all together is dope. You know what I'm saying? Hearing how you put it together. But more important to me, what always sticks out is the way you take information that is book worthy and make it like hip hopable. You know what I'm saying? If that's a
Right.
word.
Yeah.
Like you hip hop anonymous, you know what I'm saying? Like you
Right.
take it and you make it hip hop. It's pretty cool. Like how you these are things that you've thought through deeply and you're making them fit certain rhyme schemes and certain flows. And that to me is where, where I get impressed. That's where I'm like, wow, this is dope. You know, I can really appreciate this. I love the way you pick beats, the way you think through things theologically. Always resonates with me. You know what I'm saying? And helps me process things a certain way as well. So those things are there, but the way you do it artistically in the hip hop format is what makes it special to me. You know, that's what I look for when you do these album mentories. I'm like, okay, I know he got something to say. Let me see how he packages this within this dope beat here.
Right.
That's what always impresses me.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. So, like I
Yeah.
said, I am dropping another version of this album. That's in a month. That's just it's not. It's because I was working on the album, and then it took a turn, and then I went with the where it was headed and put aside where I was at. So I
Right.
still want to release those because there's some good, but it's not. It won't be an albumentary version. So I'll drop that album. Having said that, I think for me, I've realized that I'm at my best when I do albumentaries. So I don't think I'm going to release any more Kirk Kennedy albums. Just my album, if it's me, not if like me and you do something. If
Right.
me and Josh Francis do the JFK project next year, but I don't. I'm not going to release any more Kirk Kennedy albums unless it's an albumentary. And so, because that's just where I'm at, I just feel like I'm at my best when I'm able to think through how to communicate. And I think it's my niche. I don't think anyone else can do that. Like, I wanted to make an album. Like, there's a lot of music you can get anywhere, right? If you want to hear good music that's just rapping about whatever, trap or, auto tune or bars, and you can get that in a lot of places.
Mm-hmm.
I want to at least say you cannot get this unless you get it from this artist, from Kirk Kennedy. Like you gonna get better rappers than me, better beats than me, more popular than me, but you can't get what I'm giving you. Like, your favorite artist is not putting together an album like this, and I would say the majority of them cannot. We've seen many of the greats, Drakes and J. Cole's. They're not able to do that. They don't do the album. That's why people were disappointed in Certified Lover Boy, because it was basically the same album over and over again. They
Yeah.
don't know how to do that. And so I think for me, from here on out, it'll be albumentaries. And I have two other themes that I know I want to hit over the next couple years. So straight Kirk
Nice.
Kennedy albums will be that from here on out until I'm done on the mic. So having said that, man, appreciate everybody. Appreciate you liking the album, man. It's been an encouragement. And this is our platform, so we obviously going to talk about our art, in that plan.
For sure.
I do have some interviews lined up where I'm going to be talking, explaining things to people, so I'm looking forward to that. But I'm excited. Thank you all so much, man, for listening. Please let others know about the project. Share it, write stuff, tag it. I would appreciate that. It's difficult in this day and age, and this is my first time making it go streaming, so it's kind of interesting to see the knowing that people probably wouldn't have got this unless it was available for streams
Yeah.
and been like that. So, man, so I appreciate that, T-Dog Vicarious. Hey, shouts to my girl Alex Christian. She did her thing on that.
Yeah, she did.
We had a good time doing that one, and there's some later on. We're going to talk more about this, and so we will get to that. All right, let's talk about this one. And one of the reasons why I did this project, and actually we saw an article. Me and Strack read an article about Christians distinguishing between good and evil. This is so funny. This is how I feel like the Lord always does this, at least for me. I feel like the Lord does this a lot, where I will talk about something and then stuff happens in the culture that becomes relevant to what I was talking about. I didn't know it would do that. Like, I didn't know there would be a serial killer warning in Virginia that came out on Friday, the day I released the album.
Yeah, that was wild. That was
I was
wild.
crazy, right? When do you hear that, right?
Yeah, that
I
was
didn't
wild.
know that a dude would go into a school 2 weeks ago and another mass shooting, right? Didn't know that was going to happen. And then this article dropped, and this is an interesting article. It's done by the Pew Research, and the article is entitled, which I think is it's entitled Christians and religiously unaffiliated differ on whether things in society can be divided into good and evil. So I thought that was interesting, right? So me and Strack read this article, It just initially, Strack, what was your initial thoughts when you read it?
My thoughts was all over the place with that joint, man. But it is interesting to see how divided people can be on, title and stuff a certain way, like
Mm-hmm.
as it pertains to good and evil. It's just interesting that good and evil is even a thought still in today's society.
Right. Now,
You
say
know,
what you mean by that. I want to unpack that a little bit. There's still a thought.
yeah, because there's so much like of a goal and an effort to remove, like this whole concept of the nuns,
Right.
not
Yeah.
not non-affiliated, they're
Right.
not religious, they're not a part
Morally
of any
neutrals.
church.
Right.
Neutral, yeah. So with that being a segment of society that's growing so rapidly, to still be having conversations in the mainstream about good and evil, even for that to still be mentioned is kind of cool, because it shows it's evidence that that cannot go away. The reality of the existence of a true goodness will never disappear because God will never not exist. So the idea of goodness is embedded in man who's been created in the image of God, and good and evil, since the fall have been our reality, and our existence. So it's dope to see it and hear it still being discussed, and then the world trying to figure out how to maneuver through it.
Yeah.
It's
Right. Yeah.
interesting.
Well, so I won't repeat what you said. I appreciate what you said, and I agree with it. I think for me, the angle that I come from when I read it was like, wow. So in the Bible, right, it talks about one of the things that, and this is more Old Testament language than New Testament, but it spills out obviously in the New Testament. But this concept of it's an abomination to call good evil and evil good, right?
Right.
So you see that in the Old Testament as something that God hates. And when I read the
Yeah.
article, and because a lot of it has to do with Christians, I'm going to read to you the percentages in just a moment. But a lot of it has to do with believers. I thought, wow, to call good evil and evil good is something that God hates, right? So with the Spirit, people inspired by the Spirit, there should be some clarity. Sure, there's some complexity on things. Like what's challenging is people's circumstances, but not the decision. So, like, prime example, one of the reasons, like with abortion in particular, it is it is challenging if a woman was brutally raped, right? Say she was kidnapped and raped repeatedly over days, got away, all that stuff. I mean, I'm talking about just horrible.
Yeah.
And now she's pregnant. She doesn't want the baby. Most people would be like, look, the circumstances are traumatic. Like, there's no way she can have the baby. She should abort the baby. And that's kind of the example that people use, right? So I think the challenging part is when the circumstances are grotesque. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened to this woman. Like, how would I do if that was my wife? Or I mean, I have boys, but I have friends that have daughters, and like you just think like, man, that's crazy. But it still doesn't make the conclusion, the outcome necessarily. I'm not split on the outcome, right? I'm not split on should you abort or not. To me, that's
Right.
still murder, right? That's still
Right.
wrong,
Right.
even though what happened to her is oh my gosh, like I all of that stuff I can understand that, or at least can sympathize with the tragedy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it still doesn't change the conclusion of good or evil. Is the action good or evil to me? And
Right.
I feel like, and one thing the article didn't do, it didn't get into that distinction, but it speaks more to just what seems to be the objective reality of good and evil. So let me read a couple excerpts real quick from this article, right? So there's a graph where it says more than half of US Christians, listen to this, more than half of US Christians say most things in society can be clearly divided into good and evil. That's a good thing. All right. So on the graph, you got US adults. 48% say things can clearly be divided into good and evil. 50% say things are far too complicated to be divided into good and evil. All right. Among all Christians, so it breaks down like on this category, it breaks down from Protestant, white evangelical, white non evangelical, black Protestant. So, as all Christians, 54% of all Christians, polled obviously by this, say that good and evil can be is pretty clearly divided. It's pretty obvious. but 44% say things are too complicated to be divided into good and evil. Okay, that's fascinating. Let me read the excerpt from the clip. It says, for example, U.S. Christians are much more likely than religious unaffiliated Christians to say that most things in society can be clearly divided into good and evil, 54% versus 37%. Nearly 2/3 of white evangelical Protestants, 64%, say, as do 57% of black Protestants, right, to say that good and evil can be clearly seen. Members of these two groups also attend religious services and pray at higher rates than other U.S. adults. By comparison, only around half of U.S. Catholics, 49%, and white Protestants who don't identify as evangelical, 47%, say most things can be clearly divided into good and evil. Among those who identify their religion as nothing in particular, 43% say that most things in society can be clearly divided into good and evil, but far fewer atheists, 22, and agnostics, 29%, say the same. Combined, these three groups make into the nation's religiously unaffiliated population, also known as religious nuns. Overall, a majority of these unaffiliated Americans say most things in society are too complicated to be divided into good and evil. That's a fascinating thing, right?
Yeah.
When you consider the percentages. So you're talking about people who are religious, not even the Christians who are religious. The percentage is 57% of all people that they poll who are religious say that it's clear good and evil is clear. And 44% say it's not. That's a lot of people, bro. That's a lot of people who would profess to have the spirit of God.
That's for
in
Christians, for all
for
those
Christians.
that say that they're
For Christians.
Christians.
And
According
the
to Pew
culture
Research.
Yeah, according to Pew. And again, they do a good job, though. They're reputable. They're not like some flunk boy organization.
Yeah, no, for
Yeah,
sure.
Pew Research has been around for a good minute, right?
It's
so
still
they're
just
reputable.
a small segment of society.
Yeah, it's still a small segment, but but every poll you read is going to have that,
for
right?
sure.
No one polled 350 million people, right? So
yeah, it's still fascinating, though. It is.
It's fascinating, bro. Like you think, 67% of unaffiliated Americans, the religious nuns, say most things in society are too complicated to be divided into good and evil. So think about that as a Christian from the gospel perspective. The gospel presents things as good and evil, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's just the gospel, to believe in Jesus is good, to reject him is evil. So even when you're dealing with that reality, so we're living in a culture, and this is partly where I think one of the schemes of the devil is to desensitize us to things that are really evil and violent and things like that. Right. So we're entertained by it, you know? Remember back in the day when UFC, there was no way they would let women fight. Like they were like, nah, man, we're not doing that.
I do remember. I remember Dana White having like a big deal. Like
they were like, nah, we're not doing that. I remember they wouldn't even let women in the military because it was like, look, these women. And I'm not saying women. This isn't a standpoint of, complementarianism. Women should just women. It's just more of the way things have changed, where it went from women can't do this to now we're watching women like brutalize each other. Like
some of them got the best fights.
Some of them got the best fights, and you're just like, dang, bro. Like, I don't know if people in the Natural Born Killers video, there was a scene where a dude was just getting pummeled, right? I just wanted you to see him just he couldn't even defend himself. He's laying on his back, just getting his face beat in by another dude. And like, that's our entertainment, right? So when you see that, is that good or evil? What is it? Is it, so I can see why there's confusion, but I think it's a scheme of the devil to really not have Christians be able to identify good and evil, because that's where you get even sexuality. So what's good and evil about sexual? Like, where do I get my definition of good and evil from, right? And if the majority of the culture that we're in thinks things are not, it's too confusing, then it makes sense of why all this stuff is happening. You don't even have the majority of professing believers able to identify what's good and evil. Now, it gets confusing, but let me tell you why this is a problem, biblically speaking. Let me read to you just 3 verses from Hebrews chapter 5. Here's what the author of Hebrews says. And he's actually correcting people when he says this. Although by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you the basic principles of God's revelation again. Mm-hmm. You need milk, not solid food. Then he says this, Now, everyone who lives on milk is inexperienced with the message about righteousness, right? What is righteousness about? Good and evil, right? So everyone who needs milk is inexperienced with the message about righteousness. That means they're not sure what righteousness is. They're inexperienced. They don't know yet, right? And then he goes on to say this: they're inexperienced with the message about righteousness because he is an infant. But solid food is for the mature, right? And here's how you're mature. Here's what he says: solid food is for the mature. Why? For those whose senses have been trained to distinguish between good and evil. Okay, so here is a passage, God's inspired word, correcting people, this group of believers, whoever the original recipients of the letter of Hebrews, this author is writing to them and saying, look, you're inexperienced with the message of righteousness because you don't know what good and evil is. You're inexperienced. You don't know you need milk. You need someone to teach you again the basic principles of God's revelation. Someone needs to teach you what good and evil is again because you're not getting it. And then he said, solid food is for the mature, for those whose senses have been trained to distinguish between good and evil. So take that verse and now let's fast forward to the article that we just read some 2,000 years later. And here you have 54% of Christians polled think there's a clear distinction and 44% don't.
You
62%
can't
of
handle
the
the
nation
truth.
thinks that way. And here this is why this is important. Like we said at the beginning of the episode, a scheme of the devil can't take true believers away from God. It just doesn't happen. But what he can do is make us ineffective and unfruitful. And one
Yeah.
of the ways that we're the most ineffective and unfruitful is if we're unable to distinguish between good and evil. If I can't say this is evil, I'm not talking about even the courage to say it. I'm
Right.
talking about the discernment to say it, right?
Yep.
This isn't Hebrews 5 is not talking about the courage to stand up and say this is evil. That's a different thing. That's more cowardice, right? That's coward. I know what's right and I don't want to do it because I'm afraid of the consequences. All right? That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about distinguish. He even
Awareness.
uses the word distinguish to distinguish. So we're
Yeah.
talking about this article. I don't think it's talking about we know it, but we're afraid to say it. It's I don't know what's good and what's evil.
Awareness.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's crazy, bro.
Yeah, that's wild, man.
That's crazy. It's like the taming of the shrew. It's just like it's a crazy thing, and so you wonder why all this is happening in the church. You wonder why there's all these arguments over this political issue, over that issue, over this race issue, over that, because we're not even on the same page about what's good and evil,
Yeah.
right? We can't even just say this is evil. So you got, and this, and I get this is where I get. I remember all that. You can't be a Christian and vote Democrat. I understood why he was saying that. I just think that was unbiblical to say.
I
But I
remember that.
understood what he meant when it was coming out when everyone because it's like, hey, listen, these people do evil stuff. They stand for evil stuff. But it almost made it seem like the Republicans don't. They're not evil. So again, it's a challenging reality, bro.
Yeah, it is.
Now, in this article, they did also distinguish between religious affiliation by Republicans and Democrats. I thought this was interesting. So, according to this poll, the percentage of U.S. adults who say that most things in society can be clearly divided into good and evil, you had Republicans 59%, Democrats 38%. All right. Republican Christians 63%, Democratic Christians 43%. Protestant Republicans 65%, Democratic Republicans 45%. Catholic Republicans 57%, Catholic 43%. So the trend is clear. The Democratic side finds it much more difficult to define what good and evil is clearly. Church, if we don't see what's going on and understand what's
It's,
happening,
yeah.
you're going to be frustrated. You're going to be frustrated. This is a
You know
scheme.
what's wild is this does kind of like throw some leverage towards those that would say people who vote Democrat are either ignorant or not believers. You
100%.
know what I'm saying? Like this kind of throws some of that on there.
It does. I mean, I understood why it was said. I understood why it was said. I just
Yeah,
think you're adding to the gospel when you say
it's
that.
reckless. It's
It was
reckless.
reckless. It was. I think it was. So we'll call it reckless for because that's how we talk. But that joint was
Right.
sinful to me.
Oh yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
joint was sinfully judgmental of a whole bunch of people, as if
yeah.
the only people in Revelation 7 are going to be Calvinist Republicans. It's not going to be that way, famo. There's going to be a lot of people in the Revelation 7 seed that ain't never heard
Bro,
of
that laugh
Calvin.
was that's one of the realest laughs I heard you do.
That's right. That's it. That's my
It's
joint.
mad
I
jolly.
was going to take you back and hit you with that Fire Marshal Bill joint. You know about that Fire Marshal Bill, Jim Carrey's first joint.
Yeah.
That was the joint. I'll take you back to that. Well, that joint is just crazy, right? So, all right, so let's get into this, man. We had a good conversation. And so the title of this episode is The Irony of Santa Being Spelled Like Satan, right? It's
Right.
just ironic that Santa and Satan are spelled so close together. So as we told you at the beginning of our episode, at the beginning of the season, a lot of episode chapter 4 is going to be schemes of the devil and hitting different things. This is really, I know this is where I've been at personally. That's why the album was where it was. Writings
Right.
that will be subsequent coming from me in 2022 will be. I'm in a lane right now, and I'm staying in this lane for some time. And one of the things that Strack and I were having a conversation about was just this idea of, first of all, schemes of the devil. Let me back up for 1 second. Let me make sure you understand where this comes from. This is language used by Paul. Paul was the one who used this language. I don't know what translation you use. I use a CSB now. I was ESV for a long time. I use CSB now. But in the CSB translation, it's in the ESV as well, whatever translation uses there. This is what Paul says in 2 Corinthians 2. He is talking to the church about forgiving someone they excommunicated. And he was saying, look, whoever you forgive, I forgive. Like, we need to forgive people once they've been excommunicated and they've grown in repentance. And he says this in verse 10 of 2 Corinthians 2. Anyone you forgive, I do too. For what have I forgiven? If I have forgiven anything, it is for your benefit in the presence of Christ, so that we may not be taken advantage of by Satan, for we are not ignorant of his schemes. All right? Now think about what Paul is saying there. He's saying we forgive people so that we're not taken advantage of by Satan. So he's calling in this passage, if I'm not mistaken, he's saying in this passage, unforgiveness is a scheme of the devil.
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
That's what he's saying.
That's what he's saying.
When you don't forgive other people, that's a scheme of the devil. And he said, now we forgive people. We're not ignorant of his schemes. That's
Right.
one of his schemes, is to put you in a place where you do not forgive other people. Now, I'm not talking, it doesn't mean just the people you're closest to. It means the people that disagree with you on social media. It's those people, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing. So the schemes of the devil mantra comes from the Bible. One of the most important schemes of the devil, I think, is the main scheme of the devil in its most effective form in 2 Corinthians 11, where Paul again says this. He says, talking about false prophets, he says this, false apostles. He says, for such people are false apostles, deceitful workers, disguising themselves as apostles of Christ. Then he says this, and no wonder, for Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. So it is no great surprise if his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. Their end will be according to their destruction. So here's what he's saying. Satan appears to be moral, and the people who believe in him appear to be moral. Now I'm not in there with that because that's a subsequent episode or two that we want to flush out. But one of the things in the scheme of the devil that we wanted to talk about, due to this fantastic season, the most wonderful time of the year, it's the most wonderful
Wonderful
time
time
of
of
the
the
year.
year.
I tell you, man, Bing Crosby and them had great voices for Christmas, man. Them
It
white
did.
dudes was killing it, you
It
know.
did.
But then you got that Donny Hathaway. Don't sleep on that Donny Hathaway or that Temptations Christmas joint. But in this, we wanted to talk about just this
Nat
season.
King Cole. Don't forget about Nat King
Oh,
Cole.
Nat King Cole. Oh, yeah, man. You can't forget about Nat King. That man had his hair permed out. That man, he was permed out. Real articulate. all that, man. He wasn't, that's too articulate for a lot of black singers. They was like, man, we ain't doing that. But let's talk about this track. We had a conversation about the origin of Saint Nick,
Yeah.
who we know, who we equate to Santa.
Right.
And so I just want to point out that Santa and Satan are the same letters. And Santa's red. We will talk about this in a second. But Strack, I want you to get into some of the background of this, because this is a real thing, man. This is not, this is, when you think about this stuff, this is a real joy. Oh, you know what? We're gonna do this too. Noam said both Boys and Men Christmas. I can't even fake pretend sing that good. No, he said Boys and Men Christmas impersonations. I can't even. Them dudes was ridiculous with it. All right, so let's talk origin of Saint Nick, bro. Break it down for us. Who is jolly old Saint Nick?
Well, I'll try my best because I am no expert on Nick.
And I feel it. I know a little something about this.
Yeah. So basically, he dates back to, I believe, somewhere around 300 AD. Diocletius.
He's definitely 4th century.
Yeah, Diocletius. What was the name of the emperor at his time? There was it started with a D. I can't remember his name. But anyway,
Diocletius. We'll just call him that for right now.
Anyway, the dude it was a lot of persecution going on at the time. That's around the era that this man Nicholas would have lived, and he came into some money when his parents died, and he decided to, it was a very pietist type time frame, that era, and he decided to start giving away what he had, and he started doing that in secret, so that the Lord could get the glory for the gifts that were being given. That was what he, decided to do. He wound up becoming a bishop after deciding the monastery wasn't the thing for him to do. He wound up becoming a bishop. It's kind of funny how he became a bishop, because at the time the emperor was having bishops killed, right? And the dude who was the bishop of Martyr, I believe at the time, was no longer the bishop. I don't know what happened to him, but he probably got murked. And Nicholas just happened to be visiting at that time, and they had an idea of, one of the guys, I guess, had a vision and said, the first man who comes through this door is an older man and his name is Nicholas. He's going to be our bishop. So he wound up walking through the doors, and he wound up being selected as the bishop. And then he went on, of course, to fight heresies. One of the famous accounts is when he smacked the mess out of, what's his name? What's my man's name that he smacked? Irenaeus?
Irenaeus.
Nah, he didn't smack
Irenaeus.
No,
he didn't smack Irenaeus. It was
Aries.
It was Arius, right?
Arius, yeah.
Council of Nicaea stuff.
Yeah, Council of Nicaea stuff, for sure. So anyway, all of that comes about. He's a bishop. He's smacking dudes for their heresies. He's giving gifts in secret to give God glory. A man who truly was seeking to just please the Lord and love his people. That's what the desire was. And, later he became as like the patron saint of like Russia and the Greek Orthodoxy. And, that's why you see a lot of images of him that looks like almost Catholic. Mm-hmm. His Greek Orthodoxy is where he's like the top dog for it. And the patron saint of many other people, like ships,
sailors, but most
Shaps,
importantly, children, though. So
children,
this dude had intervened on. Tell him the story about the dowry. That's an important story about just the man's daughters, and then how that transitioned to him really caring for children and becoming a bishop.
There was back then, your debt, I guess at that time, meant that people could come in to collect and take whatever you had, including your children. So this man had 3 daughters, the story goes, and Nicholas heard about the account, and this man thought, well, rather than having them come and collect my daughters and wind up selling them as, basically for slave trade or sex trade, whatever the case may be, he figured if I could marry them off, I'd be better off. It'd be much better, obviously, for his children. They would have better lives. But he didn't have the dowry to be able to get his daughters married. The father at that time would have to pay a dowry to the father of the groom for the marriage to take place. So what happened was Nicholas wound up giving in secret through the window to this home for the daughters, for each daughter to be married away.
This man was dropping gold off,
He
fam.
was dropping gold off
He was
through the
dropping
window.
bags of gold off.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah, yep. So that's just one of the accounts to kind of show, the way that he cared for people truly with the things that he had. So, and there's a bunch of like spiritual accounts of like prophetic things that took place. Whether you rock with that or not, there's just a bunch of historical accounts that are written down about the dude. Things that he saved. Apparently, he saved children that had been like killed, and then he resurrected them, and all kind of stuff. All kind of stories, and that's what we come to today. All kind of stories developed off of a man that lived in the fourth century. You know.
Right, yeah, he was kind of ordained, I guess, if you was, as the patron saint of children. That
Yeah.
was one of his, because he had done so much work. And so the dowry is the most popular story, but he was known to give gifts to children a lot.
Right.
And it became, and somehow he was, I forgot where he went, but someone said, brother, you can't do this anonymously. Like, people need to know it, for integrity's sake, you're doing this. So the word got out that it was this Nicholas who was giving people gifts. And he did this a lot, actually. He did it a lot for a lot of children. So people loved him and admired him enough that they started imitating that. So this idea of gift giving became an imitation of this man who would eventually be the patron saint of children, the patron saint of, they said, sailors, and people loved him.
Yeah.
That's what he was known for. So he was
For
doing this.
sure.
So this idea of giving gifts to children became something that was more an imitation of him. And over time, this idea, and it being Saint Nicholas, and I think, and then in the Greek, it's the Chris. His name was Chris. It was like Chris Kin. It was Kin. It was I forgot how to say it, but it
Yeah.
became Chris
Kingle.
Kringle.
Yeah.
I
It
think it
was.
was. It
Yeah.
wasn't Kindle like the app that you use to
Nah.
read
Nah.
books, but
Nah.
it was something like that. But it kind of morphed into this urban legend based on who he was. This
Right.
idea that you give gifts to children, and then you had over time different narratives. Like it morphed, right? So then it becomes, all right, Saint Nicholas returns to give gifts to good children, and then if you don't, then Saint Nicholas will give you over to Krampus,
Right.
who was like this demon who was obviously created. Let me tell you something about a lot of our. This is a sidebar. A lot of our understanding. I don't know how many people think like this, but a lot of our understanding of what the devil and all these things. It's all medieval art, right?
For sure.
A lot of this stuff came out in like medieval time where there were these depictions and stuff. So this depiction of the devil with like goat legs and the Baphomet goat head and all this stuff, like that all was kind of medieval art that became a standard way. And then obviously then in the Victorian area, he became an all red demon with a tail and a pitchfork. And so he's kind of morphed into these different things over time.
Right.
But this story of Krampus, which would be like this goat, this demon, kind of a demon figure, that if you were bad, Krampus would take children, he would beat them and then take them to hell for a year. So you had Saint Nicholas, this real person who really tried to honor the Lord as far as the history that we've come across. He is canonized as a saint because of his works. And then the story morphs into, okay, he becomes the one who gives gifts. Now, here was the danger. He's giving gifts to all these children. We're like, how do you give gifts to thousands and thousands and millions of children, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the narrative is, if you're not a good kid, then you're going to go with Krampus. You're going to go to hell for a year.
Right.
So what you do is you create a culture where you all of a sudden make this man, Saint Nicholas, godlike in his character and then in his ability to provide gifts. And then you create another element where if the children are not obedient, they're going to be taken to hell by Krampus, a demonic kind of figure. And so now you have this creation of morality by fear, right? So
Yeah.
let's make children be obedient because they're afraid to go to hell. Now, mind you, like these are all the seed beds. When you think about it today, look at how this transforms today. Where there are a lot of Christians who are afraid to go to hell. So that what they call it, fire insurance, right?
Yeah.
So you believe in Jesus because you don't want the consequences for not believing in Jesus, not because you actually realize you're a sinner that needs a savior and that
Right.
he's provided a way of escape. And so what you have is a lot of people don't even have the foundation because it's a lot like this narrative where I'm focusing on not wanting the consequences. But fear only lasts so long.
Yeah.
You grow up, things change, you get bolder, you get tired of being afraid. Love is what keeps you. Fear is what makes you rebel eventually. So
Mm-hmm.
when you create this dynamic of a narrative where this season of giving is measured by if you're good or evil, and these two figures, Saint Nicholas and that was sort of the Greek and sort of European view, but then it becomes Santa Claus when it comes becomes American.
Right.
It turns into like this idea of Santa Claus. But the picture of it and the scheme of the devil is essentially to create a being and to give him a degree of omnipotent qualities,
Yeah.
right? And to give gifts and to make the celebration of his basically attributes. Like if you think about the non-Christian view of like Santa Claus, what are you really celebrating, right? Like you're not because you're not celebrating the birth of Santa Claus,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you strip away just what the Bible says and what we believe we're doing in terms of Christmas, if you
You're
strip it away,
celebrating gift giving.
you're
Yeah.
celebrating the you're celebrating gift giving, but you're celebrating this omniscient dude
Mm-hmm.
who gives gifts, and you're actually trying to imitate him,
Yes.
right? So I'm trying to be like a mythic figure who, in his description, now, I don't know where when Santa became fat. I think that was like an American thing, right?
Coca-Cola.
Yeah, Coca-Cola started that. Exactly right.
Yep.
They were the first ones to make that Kris Kringle figure. But when you think about how Santa looks, right? You think about who this person is, like this idea that he's omniscient, he's omnipotent, he determines and morality. What does Santa look like, right? White hair, right?
Right.
All of this. Listen to this in Daniel 7, verse 9. As I kept watching thrones, thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was white like snow, and the hair of his head was like the whitest wool. His throne was flaming fire, his wheels were blazing fire, right?
Hmm.
So here you see, and I don't know how many depictions of Santa you've seen. I've seen a lot where sometimes the reindeers have like flame under their feet as they're
Yeah. Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
it.
For sure.
But Santa's always this long white hair, like snow white hair. And so here you have almost a depiction of the Ancient of Days
Mm-hmm.
attributed to a mythic fat dude
Right.
named Santa Claus or Saint Nicholas. So you take so this is where we think like, wow. So when you create a being who is omniscient, now to some degree omnipresent, like not like quasi omnipresent, right? Because he's not everywhere, but how does a dude get across the whole world in a nighttime? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
how
It's
does
bananas.
Santa get across the whole world? So there's a degree of he has to be omnipotent, he has to be omnipresent, he has to be so
Yeah.
you get this quasi character, you call him Santa. Ironically, the almost exact identical spelling as Satan.
Yeah.
He's not real. And then Christians actually wrestle with telling their kids Santa's not real.
Right. I think also one huge element to this is it teaches our children self righteousness.
Yeah.
It teaches them to practice towards looking good before this omniscient figure, because he's always watching you. He knows when you're right. He knows when you're wrong. He knows when you're lying, when you're telling the truth. He knows what you're doing at all times. You know what I'm saying? So they got this. The thing is the trickery, right? What it plays off of one day a year, children receive the gifts that they've wanted all year long. You know, so they start right away creating this list of things that they long for from friends that they see in school. You know, the new sneakers they see, whatever the case may be. They're longing for this one day, right? And attributed to that is how well are you gonna act throughout the year? You know what I'm saying? Like, are you gonna do really good to deserve the things that you have on your list, right? And if you don't, then what happens? You don't receive the gifts. So you got to work to receive the gifts. If you don't live up to a certain standard, you don't receive the gifts, and it's all predicated over this the little heart of a child who longs for this one day. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, that's wild. You're messing with kids' hearts as they grow older. Then they have this concept that they transition over to what they hear in the church, which is fire and brimstone preaching often, you know, and then they don't really grasp a concept of grace, and they end up with works-based righteousness embedded within them from a Christmas theology.
You can't handle the
It's
truth.
it's wild. Like, if you really think about that,
Nah,
it's
brother,
wild.
you're right. And let's go back to what we said a few minutes ago. So we're talking about not understanding the difference between good and evil. Like, it's too
Right.
complicated for believers, right? So 54%, 44% of believers struggle with good and evil, right? The distinguishing it. Now think about this. Now I want to take that down and apply it to what I was saying a few minutes ago. That there were Christians who struggle with telling their kids that Santa's not real.
Right.
So so you think that lying to your kids
It's
about a
better.
mythic figure that creates the works righteousness that you're talking about, right? And it creates a degree of self absorption, right? And then let's back down to even in our nation, you co-opt it. So Christmas, even for Christians, becomes about giving gifts and not about glorifying God for the
Mm.
gift that we've been given.
Right.
Right? It becomes about that. So the stress and the people go into debt because they got to buy gifts and you got to do the
Yep.
stuff and all of it becomes about imitating a mythic figure,
It's crazy.
imitating a mythic figure who essentially, and if it's not, listen, let's go back to what Jesus said to Peter. Get behind me, Satan, right? So if you think outside of the will of God, then that's satanic. So let's check it. So now we're talking about a mythic figure whose name is a scrambled version of Satan
That's still so
becomes
wild.
it's crazy, right? The enemy is
Yeah.
sharp, bro.
Yeah.
That dude is a formidable opponent, right? Who else
Yeah.
could tempt Jesus? Like that dude tempted the Messiah that we say we love, fam. Like he's a formidable opponent. So you take a mythic figure, scramble his name from Satan to Santa, make us, even as Christians, believe in the urban legend of him to teach our children something that in many ways we think is harmless because it's for children,
Right.
but it's actually harming our children in understanding why we actually do Christmas
Right.
and that Santa is not a real thing. And then you have Christians arguing over whether or not they're going to let their kids grow up believing a mythic urban legend, a lie
Right.
to perpetuate an idea of imitating someone who gives gifts, which is a good thing. It's better to give than to receive, but it's not, it has to be done in the spirit of the actual one who actually gave the gift.
Or even the idea of, like pushing this right and wrong off of just one a gift that they receive at the end of the
Right,
year.
right.
Like, their concept of right and wrong is being developed off of receiving a gift at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
That could be played and used as, you know, teaching the eternal narrative, how
Yeah.
we receive that eternal gift. But when the end goal is just unwrapping this present that I'm going to throw away in a few weeks, and
Right.
that's what my understanding of right and wrong, good and evil is based on, as to whether or not I attain this gift, how screwed up, are we making our children by doing that?
Well, we're telling our children that their obedience is connected to capitalistic value,
Yeah,
right? So their obedience is connected to consumeristic value.
it's a Polly Pocket.
Right. So
Yeah,
I'll do good things. So then you wonder why you get a whole generation of young girls who have only fan pages.
right.
Or you get a generation of women who want to have plastic surgery to look a certain way to get the gift of attention, to get the gift
Mm,
of rich men wanting to be with them, to get the like you. It's not as subtle as we think. Like it may think like it's not. It's harmless to children, but we're teaching them. And think about who children are, right? They're forming their worldviews, right? Your first understanding of the world will come from the people that raised you.
right,
That will come from the people like my children understand things about the world because they've grown up with me as their dad.
right,
They understand things about Christ and different because I'm their dad and I've taught them these things. So you formulate a worldview on their value, and so my
right,
value is connected to getting things, and the main way we get things is money, is commerce. So now my value is connected to how much money I have, to how much I can buy gifts for myself or gifts for others. It's way deeper than just telling my kids about a Santa Claus. It's setting in motion. And we may think it's not that serious, but look at the way it plays out in society.
yeah, yeah,
You look at the way in a culture like ours, it's built on capitalism. And don't get me wrong, I don't have a problem with the socioeconomic, you know, characteristic traits of capitalism. But I think we don't realize while the impact that we're having by placing value in a society where the more you have, the more you are, right?
yeah,
The better you are. You teach the children at young ages, well, you're not gonna if you're not good, you're not gonna get these things in life from Santa, and you can
right,
use Christmas all year, fam.
yeah,
That's the that this holiday is so powerful in the way that the culture celebrates it. Like you can tell your kids in March, all right, you're not getting anything for Christmas then
that's
if
right.
you keep
It's
acting like
done.
that.
People do it all the
Yeah,
time.
all the time. So you're building your children into a particular day
Yeah,
and a particular kind of obedience that earns them a reward. And that reward isn't necessarily eternal because, as you said, I mean, you'll get rid of that joint in a couple of weeks. It's a
right.
toy, unless it's something like a computer or something, you move on. So
And that
now,
movement. Go
even
ahead.
the thing that I was trying to be moral for doesn't really have value.
Nah, it loses
And,
its value quick.
and then we wonder why believers don't find value in Christ.
Hmm.
Why we need something. I do a lot of counseling as a pastor, and I have to sometimes let people know, listen, I'm not going to tell you something that's true. I'm going to reiterate. No, something that's new. I'm going to reiterate what's true. People are looking for new things. They want new verses, new encouragement, new these things. And I'm not even blaming them for. I'm not even talking about just people who are pursuing the world. I'm talking about they want something that's new. And the Bible is about reiterating things that are true,
Right.
right? And so so there are times I have to tell people, listen, I'm not going to tell you some new stuff. It may sound cliche, but let's talk about, because it's not like, do you know what this passage is or do you have read it? It's, do you know how to apply it, right? Do you know
Hmm.
how to take that grace and apply it and live out that verse? I had a brother ask me, what you mean by apply grace? It's just obeying it, like living it out,
Yeah,
like living out those things. But I think we've created, not even created, we've created a culture where even the thing that you value is not sustainable. It doesn't last. And so even believers who find their value in receiving the gift of salvation can be eventually not even amazed by it anymore in
that's
the
true.
same way, because we've created a culture where moralism will get you this gift, but then you got to get a new gift every year because you're going to get tired of this one.
Well, if we think we could earn it, we could earn it again.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? And dispose of it as we please.
Or you
That's the
have people who
reality.
think if I have to earn it again, it's not worth earning anyway then.
Yeah.
Right. So
And
again, a lot of this stuff doesn't seem like a big deal, but now I know in my home, we just were like, we're not telling our kids about Santa. And I'm not judging. If you're a believer and you taught your kids about Santa, I'm not judging you. I'm not saying that I just didn't do that. I wasn't doing that. I'm not making it a moral issue that if you do that, I understand why people would do that. I'm just saying if you have children and you talk about and you make them believe in Santa, my recommendation would be that this is the last year you do that, and that you start making sure your kids understand that you're the Santa giving them gifts because we've been given the ultimate gift of salvation in Christ.
Yeah.
And when we're giving to our children, we're giving it to them not because they've earned it, but because we love them. Because we get gifts from the Lord, whether we earned them. You ever been blessed by the Lord? You feel like, man, I ain't even been on my game lately.
Right.
You know, like sometimes we don't, it's a dangerous thing. And in our culture where the socioeconomic, categories are capitalism, where you're trying to earn income and you're defined by the income that you have, it's a dangerous thing to embed in our children that
Yeah.
moralism will get them this. And
Especially when you consider like the man, Nicholas, you know, in comparison to the image that we have today, which
right,
spearheads this movement, this Christmas movement, especially in America. Santa Claus is such a big deal. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? And he is the opposite of what this man was.
right,
So this man was giving gifts to people who were in need, giving of himself to help and love others. So if you are going to tell your children about Santa Claus, don't tell them about this dude that we've made, this god that we've made after our own liking. You know what I'm
right,
saying? Like,
yeah,
word up. Don't tell them about him. Tell them about Nicholas from the 4th century. What he did, his heart to serve and to give gifts in secret so that the Lord could receive glory for the gifts that were given.
right,
Do we teach our children about giving so that other people who are in need can have, because we've been blessed, so we're able to bless others. That's what we should be teaching people as far as Nicholas is concerned.
yeah. As far as Nicholas, and I
Right,
think, the emphasis, what I love about what you just said is that, like, he didn't give gifts depending on if people were naughty or nice.
right.
He wasn't making that moral determination.
That's right.
He wasn't saying, "Oh, you." No, he was saying these people are in need, and I
Yep,
can provide,
yep,
and I want God to be glorified.
yep.
And in all honesty, if we're really honest with ourselves, God gives us gifts based on His character,
Hmm.
not ours.
That's right.
I'm not saying that He blesses us and things, and I get it, but I think that's the reality, and I think that can be so. Again, when I think about all this and how the schemes of the like, it's fascinating to me to see the for many believers the importance of maintaining the Santa urban legend,
Yeah.
and not recognizing the impact on your children. I don't know if you've heard this, right? I've heard stories of people who, when they found out Santa wasn't real as they got older, they were devastated, bro.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
For
they were
sure.
devastated. Now, I
Yeah.
will say this. We did tell our kids there was a tooth fairy. We did do that, and we would put money under their pillow. I didn't have a problem doing that because that had nothing to do with anything salvific. It didn't rival God, none of that stuff. We did that for a couple of years. Then I was like, man, this is just dumb. Why am I giving them money for their teeth? I buy them everything anyway. We
You
just
saw you
stopped
saw
it.
the movie you saw the movie with The Rock, and you was like, this is stupid. Why am I doing this?
I don't think so, but I mean, all right, for the sake of the show, what I'm saying? I just was like, man, what am I buy these kids everything anyway. What am I giving them a dollar or two for because your tooth came out? I was like, this is dumb. But like when it came to Santa Claus, I just was like, I don't want to do that. I don't
Yeah.
want to tell my kids that there is some mythic being
Right.
that knows if they're good and evil. It just sounds like God to me.
Too much. Too
It just
much.
sounds like God to me.
Because
It
then when you
sounds
go
like,
to teach them about the Lord, truly, you're teaching them about Christ, you're
mhm,
teaching about his omniscience and his love for you. Then you're all of a sudden thinking about, like, wait, these kids are probably in their mind correlating the two and
mhm,
thinking, wait, this sounds a lot like Santa, who you said is
mhm.
not real. What's the deal, Dad? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's, come on, man. We don't want to set ourselves up in that way. That's not, I mean, mind you, we can't convince our children of the existence of God. We know that's a work of the Holy Spirit. But you be setting yourself up for failure doing this whole Santa thing, man.
100%, bro.
Real rap.
I just think it's a scheme of the devil. I mean,
Yeah.
it's why, because remember this: the devil we're going to talk about this in the subs. There's going to be a couple episodes where I think we're going to really pound this in. But the devil appears as an angel of light. That means
Yeah.
he likes morality.
Yep.
And so if he can just distract and look, when you think about it, the devil doesn't, if you think about, look at all the religions in the world, right? There's a ton of religions, and most of those religions are about what? Being a better person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know many religions that are about be as evil as you can be. I don't even think we would call them religions. We call them cults or something else, right? But
Right.
an actual religion has a morality attached to it. And if every other religion or every morality is just another law because it's outside of Christ, and it's all a distraction from the eternal reality. So even in this culture, this idea, it's a distraction from biblical morality. And Satan doesn't mind if you're moral. He
Nah.
doesn't mind a nice neighborhood where people are kind to each other, that do all this stuff, but
Fam,
they
Judas
don't love the
walked with
Lord
them
at all.
for a minute. Judas was mad moral. You know what I'm saying?
He
Like he
was
was
moral,
with them for a while. Unless he was
100%.
the one hearing Jesus' correction all the time. You know what I'm saying? You gotta assume he was somewhat moral.
He was a moral. I mean, you know why you can make that assumption? Why that's a legitimate assumption? Let me tell you exactly why. There's truth in that statement. Because when Jesus was in the upper room and he said, "One of you will betray me," what did they
Mm-hmm.
all say?
They all asked me?
Is it me?
Me? Yeah.
Is it me? No
Yep.
one said, "Oh man, it's Judas.
Right.
That dude been faking this whole time," right?
Right.
None of them said. That's what we do today. When the Spirit's convicting us, we think it's somebody else that
Hmm.
he's talking to. When Jesus said, "One of you will betray me," they all said, "Is it me, Lord?" They
Right.
even asked Peter to ask. Even when Jesus said, "It's the one who will put his hand in the bowl with me," and then Judas did it.
Hmm.
Judas was so like them, and Jesus didn't expose Judas in any way, shape, or form, that when he said, "One of you will betray me," it didn't even cross their minds that it was that dude. Even when he dipped his hand in the dish and then left, didn't even
Mm-hmm.
cross his mind. So I think what you're saying is absolutely true, brother. Like, Judas was a moral dude, and he
Yeah.
was more. Jesus was the only one that knew he's really immoral.
Right.
He's really not the one, So, listen, we're not trying to ruin nobody's Christmas around here.
Nah, not
We're
at
just
all.
trying to bring some
We
clarifications,
try and make Christmas better. You
trying
know
to
what
make
I'm
it real,
saying?
trying to make it eternal for you, family.
Word up.
You know, trying to make it eternal. But like we live in a culture where it's like, "Is it me, Lord?" That's humility. Man,
Mm.
is it me? Let me
Yeah.
take the log out of my own eye.
Yeah.
But we live in a culture where it's like, "Oh, it's them.
Mm-hmm.
It's them people. Those are the people you need to warn them about." Let me
Right.
ask you this question: who warns you about you?
Mm.
Who's warning you about you? That's what we should always. Somebody's got to be warning us about
About
us.
us. Amen.
Someone's got to be warning us about us. If I'm
Word
getting
up.
warned about everybody else but me, there's a problem.
Yep.
The enemies might be working.
Yep.
Someone's got to warn us about us, and it's biblical. That's Colossians 1. We proclaim him, warning and teaching everyone, right? With
Amen.
all wisdom, so that we may present everyone mature in Christ.
Amen.
So, Merry Christmas. You know what I'm saying? From us, ain't no dudes coming down my chimney. And then you live in a day and age where if you from where I'm from, ain't no dudes coming down my chimney. You know what I'm saying?
No.
I'll beat your head in. Make Christmas great again. You know what I'm saying? MCGA. That's what we talking about, baby. Make Christmas great again. I tell you what, man. The devil is really good, bro. And he's
Yeah.
just scheming everybody out, and believers ain't even seeing it. Not like we got it and they don't, but I think a lot of us are distracted, woefully distracted but we're very horizontal people. And the Bible says, man, make sure you live vertically
Right.
though, right? Set your mind on things above where
Yeah.
the Lord is, right? Because where your treasure is, your heart will be also. We're just very horizontal. And I think it just becomes a challenge for us.
That's
So
right.
listen, man, we hope y'all do have a good Christmas though, and we hope that the true Christmas and the reason why all that he's the reason for the season. Those are cool slogans, and I appreciate them because they remind us. But let's be more intentional with our families to explain why he is. Like I want my kids
Right.
to know I'm buying you this gift not because you did this. Yeah, we reward good behavior. That's not unbiblical to do that. The
Mm-hmm.
Bible says we will get rewards for our faithfulness. It is not unbiblical. But we don't want to make the foundation of how we think about gifts and rewards be connected to some mythical being who really, in many ways, Santa is really Satan in the eternal realm. It's just
Facts.
it's distracting us from believing in the one true God, and that's what the culture is like. He's the ancient of days with long hair, white hair, and sits in some faraway place and can hit everyone with all these gifts and can knows who's been naughty and nice. And it's like, man, nah,
Stop
fam.
it. Stop it.
You know what I'm saying? Nah, fam. I don't.
Satan's clothes.
We don't believe you. You need more
More
people.
people.
You know what I'm saying? We appreciate y'all. Listen, man. Go get the album, and if you're not sure where to get it from, you can go right here to curtkennedy.com. I am slowly, Strack, moving a lot of what I do to my website. I kind of have just not been tripping off of it for years, but the way social media is going, where they could just stop your, Facebook really, really showed me. I mean, I haven't had any real problems with Facebook, but they really showed me something with the Natural Born Killers video. And so, and even all these, I mean, yeah, we use these platforms. We're on Facebook Live right now. We're on YouTube Live right now. I get it. But I'm
Yeah.
trying to build stuff into kurtkennedy.com. So if they shut all that, if they shut me out, people can still hear what I got to say right
So
there.
that's what you gotta do. That's hishypeman.com. We do the same thing. You know what I'm
That's what we
saying?
gotta do, man. I think we need to have that reality, because
Facts.
if we don't, we
They
could
just
be
gonna
in
keep
trouble.
pushing us in the hole, man. They gonna keep trying to hide us, like, take away the voice.
Well, they
But
are.
they can't take away the voice though, man.
They
They
can't take it
can't.
away, baby. But they go. Hey, listen, they gonna try though.
They
don't
definitely gonna try.
don't act like they not. They gonna try. So you got kurtkennedy.com, hishypeman.com, Serial
Excuse me.
Killer Smiling Pictures. The albumentary version is everywhere that you can get music from. I would prefer you to buy. Listen, do your brother a justice, right? Do me a
Yeah.
solid. Buy the
Yeah.
joint and stream it. You know what I'm saying? It's $10, fam. You
10
eat more
pesos, eso
than
no es
that.
nada.
You eat more than that for lunch, and I guarantee you, the music will last longer than the meal you just ate with.
Word up.
So don't forget to do that. Go to hishypeman.com. Strack is vicious with the brush. He got a project dropping coming soon. I got
Yes.
Serial Killer Smiling Pictures. The
Yes.
non-albumentary version will be dropping next month, and I'm looking forward to that. That's just gonna be, it's a different vibe. But if you heard, once you hear this version, that version, can you understand the narrative that I'm after? But I just did that. I'm only dropping that because I was working on a different version, and then this one took a life of its own and became what you all have heard. And I didn't want to just have that music just sitting around for nothing. So I'm
Right.
still going to release that. But then in 2022, I think I got to write. There's a lot of stuff I need to write and focus on. And so I'm not going to do music as much, but I'll be back in 2023. Let's me and Josh Francis do the JFK joint. I'll be back with the next albumentary. And I got what it's called. I know all of it. So I'm looking forward to that, man. But we
Word.
appreciate y'all a lot. Thank you for riding with us. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There is a link in the description. If you're listening to it on the podcast, you can just go there, subscribe to the channel. If you're on YouTube, go to. If you're on YouTube, you're already there watching. If you're watching live but haven't subscribed, hit the button. Stop fronting. If you're on Facebook, hit the button. Go to YouTube. Curt Kennedy's Corner.
Yeah.
Do that for us, man. We'd appreciate that. That would be a Merry Christmas for us. Tell people about the project and get to me, man. I would love to hear what songs stand out to y'all, what things that benefited y'all, what y'all like, stuff like that, man. It's encouraging, believe me, as an artist, when people say like, "Hey, I love this." And let me tell you what's not encouraging. And with this, this happens. This was funny to me. It's funny when people be like, you do like an 18 song album, and people be like, "Yo, this is the song. This is my favorite song," and it's like one joint, and you like, I mean, it's cool that you got a favorite song, but it's like, fam, I got, so you like one song out of 18. And I know that's not what people mean, but that's how I can come off sometimes. Like, man, I like one joint. It's like, nah, man, nah. But I've been grateful, man.
You
People have
ain't
been
got
getting
the lie. You ain't got the lie,
the
Craig.
lie, Craig. You know what I'm saying? They don't even know about that. So there's gonna be something to talk about the album, but I still need to let it sit. it's too early to expose everything. I'm gonna let it sit. So we appreciate y'all, man. Those of you listening on the digital, thank you so much, man. Appreciate y'all who listening to the podcast. Those of you who
Yes.
ride with us live, appreciate y'all. We love y'all, man. Subscribe to the channel, all that and all that. I'm Curt Kennedy. He's Stract the Wolverine, and we out of here, y'all. Grace and peace.
Peace.
Indeed. Get the album.